if you are just joining us or coming from one of the other breakout rooms, you're with Farming Today. Coming into the noon hour here, we have our final two presentations of the conference, which we hope you've enjoyed and had a great time or had as much fun as we have. Thank you to all of our speakers, all of our sponsors. So before we break out, because it is 11:59, but I want to just say that a thank you to our sponsors, Compeer Financial, Minnesota Milk, Central Minnesota Credit Union, and CentraCare. They were our commodity sponsors for this event. Everyone is here to hear from our speakers with the Headwaters Agriculture Sustainability Partnership. And I will turn it over to them so that they can introduce themselves. Thanks for being here, everyone.
So I'm Erin Niehoff. I'm with Environmental Initiative. We're the administrator for the Headwaters Agriculture Sustainability Partnership. And we're here today to talk about one of the projects that partnership has been putting together around the return on investment of conservation practices. So it's short introductions for viewers. So again, like I said, I'm with Environmental Initiative and we administer HASP, and I'm going to turn it over to Keith for him to provide a brief introduction.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Erin. Keith Olander, Director of AgCentric, work for Minnesota State. AgCentric is a center of excellence that directs more of the work to the northern side of Minnesota. But very specifically for our conversation today, I also direct the Farm Business Management Program in Minnesota. We have about 3,000 farms enrolled in that and dealing around the economics and financial management of on-farm production.
Mark, do you want to go?
I'm Mark Lefebvre. I'm a conservation planner with the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District. And my involvement in the project was to assist with the environmental assessments on all the three farms.
Kerfeld, do you want to take it next?
Sure. Tim and Nicholas Kerfeld, dairy farm and up central Minnesota here, just north of Freeport, Melrose area. Milk about 280 cows and raise most of our forages for the dairy.
Okay, there we go. Tom, do you want to go next?
Okay, so my name is Tom Gregory. So with my wife and brother Ed and son Nick, we own and operate Mill Creek Dairy. We have about 600 cows. With the young stock, we have about 1,300. It requires a lot of feed, and also they provide us a lot of nutrients, a lot more than we need. So we house our cattle at 4 different facilities. Our place is specifically for breeding, or not for breeding, for birthing, and calves are kept here until breeding age, and then they go to another facility where that farmer takes care of them until they're pregnant, and then after that they go to another facility that we rent, and we take care of all the feeding and bedding and so forth, and then 3 weeks before calving they come back to our dairy again, and we hoof trim them and we get them ready for calving, and once they calve they go to the dairy. It's out in the field across the road about 600 feet. That's another situation, and they're kept there and taken care of there by our herdsman Myron Schmitz. He's been with us for over 20 years, and they stay there until they're ready to dry off, and then they go back to the farm where the cattle were pregnant, and then it all starts over again. So
thanks, Tom. So just a brief introduction to the Headwaters Agriculture Sustainability Partnership. It's a cross-sector partnership of agriculture professionals that support farmers through technical advice, agronomic guidance, farming services, and cost share resources to motivate farmers in Minnesota to adopt on-farm conservation practices. Mostly it's a group of people who are really interested in gathering together in a forum to think about different projects and ways that we can continue to support the farmers in Minnesota, as well as protecting our natural resources. And then this is a list of all of the different HASP partners. As a quick note, there are a few other projects that HASP is working on. One is an initiative called All Acres for Our Waters, taking place in the Bacchus Lake Sauk River watershed. If you have more questions on that, you can always contact Mark later, or Leif, who's also hanging out on the call here today. And then we also have an upcoming project with the Ecosystem Services Marketplace Consortium that will be helping to provide incentives to farmers who are implementing different conservation practices that improve water quality, soil health, and carbon storage. So, but here's more on this particular project. So return on investment. As I'm sure a lot of you know, oftentimes conservation practices are touted because of their environmental benefits, but not as much as necessarily talked about around their profitability or how conservation practices impact a farm's bottom line. And so what we were really interested in as a partnership was working together to kind of explore that. So again, this project is to try to demonstrate the profitability of on-farm conservation and understand the connection between farm finances and conservation practices. And we did this by using metrics from established financial and sustainability programs and analyzing metrics by whole farm and individual crops. So to talk about some of the different tools that were used, I am going to turn it on over to Keith and then Mark.
Thanks, Aaron. Very specifically, these are in a physical sense. The bottom line is we have to figure out what we are going to manage, and therefore we have to measure it. That means all dollars in, all dollars out, and managing inventories. And that's very intense financial record keeping, which particular farms in this case have got some good record keeping systems. It's just a matter of how do we move that into FinPac, and what that then allows us to do is to benchmark. So we can compare against other farms that are in the region. We do that all anonymously, or in this case, we're looking at water quality certification and how do they rank up against their peers. We're also trying to drive efficiency with that. And in this particular case, we're looking very specific at the adoptions of the conservation practices and how does it mark against, or how does it affect the farm's financial picture. Knowing that in cover crops case, it's assessment, right? There is an economic return. Because as we look to adoption from these three farms to other farms, one of the questions that's going to be key is how does this impact our operation financially? And that is really the question that we're trying to answer through our very specific metrics, through FinPac, through FinBin, and doing that through other softwares like Rankum. And again, it comes back to that record keeping. We teach that, move that on, and then go on from there. Our program does operate year round as it does with these three farms, looking at all aspects of the operation, both livestock and crop. But again, coming back to this whole idea, we need to measure every component of that, including family living, as it impacts, so we get a true overhead cost to each of our acres or each of our animal output units, be it milk in this case, per hundredweight. So that's really where the financial component comes in.
Mark, do you want to take the water quality and sustainability?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So this project used two different environmental platforms to assess the performance of the management practices that all three farms did. So the first one you can see on the screen was the Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification Program. And that's a whole farm assessment on all fields and all crops. And you get a score from 1 to 10 on all those fields based on the runoff risk of the field, with an 8.5 being the certification level. So if a farm gets certified, there's some benefits. The first is there's 10 years of regulatory certainty. The other thing that probably most farmers reason they get involved is priority access to different financial assistance. So this assessment evaluates the nutrient management, tillage management, pest management, and then adjustments are made to each field. If it's irrigated or has tile, drainage in the field, and then further adjustments are made if there's conservation practices, like that's what was the field markets field print calculated. And this assessment not only looks at the water quality, like the certification program does, and along with soil conservation, it also includes biodiversity, energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, irrigation, water use, land use, and soil carbon. And if there's any questions about the assessments, we'll answer those at the end. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So before we end up turning things on over to Tim and Nicholas and Tom, I am going to just share the video that we put together as part of this project before we can dive into some of these questions. All right. Just a second.
The Headwaters Agriculture Sustainability Partnership has conducted a case study on 3 Stearns County dairy farms to demonstrate the profitability of on-farm conservation.
It was 34 years ago yesterday that I quit my job and bought a herd of cows, and I started renting the barn here and started farming here on my own. Farming's just been in my blood, I think, since I was a kid. I grew up on a farm. We are a dairy farm. We grow corn, soybeans, alfalfa, barley. We own and rent. We have corn and alfalfa. We have 600 cows total, and with all the young stock, we've got about 1,300 head of animals altogether, spread over 3 farms. As farmers, we all know the importance of producing food for people. And I think that's one thing this pandemic has actually magnified his home jobs where it gets old after a while, and it's not a challenge anymore because you pretty much have hit everything.
You have to keep up with the technology and try to figure out what's good for your farm, what can you use, and try to employ it somehow. Because if you're not changing with the times, you're sitting still. And nowadays, you have to be moving.
We want our land to be here for the next generation. We raise our family on this farm, and we want to make sure the water is safe to drink. We want to make sure the water going downstream is clean.
Conservation is very important to us. You want to leave the land in a better position than what it is when you got it.
I want to leave it better for my kids and grandkids. So we have to involve strips along our ditch to keep off of those buffer strips because of the nutrient that ran off the field.
Done several things.
Plant directly into it, we don't till it directly into it with corn, and then we get a crop of corn out of it.
So we employ cover crops in the fall, try to capture the last of the nutrients that we had on the crop previously, and to make forage for the cows.
Well, now I'm trying cover crops for the first time this year, and I'm excited about what they might do for me.
Minimum till, up to no till.
We minimal till as much as we can. I mean, we still use a chisel plow and a digger, but it's one pass. We don't make multiple passes. And so our ground is somewhat rough, but we still have good soil seed contact, and that's what matters. One would be like the stacking slab. Before we stored it wherever we had a spot where something wasn't growing. And sometimes that was leaching into the groundwater or running off in the creek. So now we have that. This farm produces much more manure than it needs, so other farmers around us come and take from that to fertilize their fields as well. And then we also have 7 million gallons of storage for liquid manure that's injected into the ground. It adds nutrients to the ground that commercial fertilizer doesn't.
One of the last projects we are just about done completing here is a stacking slab for manure storage so that we can retain all those nutrients in there, and then we can apply them in the fall and get them injected right in the ground so that we get the most out of that. We do grid sampling so that we have a map of each field of where the nutrients are short and where they're plentiful, so that we put the nutrients on like we normally did, but we put it on where they need them and not where they don't need them.
I have a crop consultant, and he advises me on how to apply my nutrients, when and where. He suggests what I need for a commercial fertilizer, but now with our liquid manure and our stacking slab, all we use is the manure that we produce. I know we're making the soils better.
I know there are farmers out there that resist a lot of different programs, maybe because they didn't have a good experience with some things they had done in the past. But I think we still got to be open-minded to new things that are coming along and do our best to talk to other farmers and people that you know and trust, and believe that if they tried something and it worked for them, it probably could work for me and actually could be really helpful.
In this chart, you can see with 1 year of data, there are early indications that case study farmers who have adopted various conservation practices have higher median and average net incomes than the average regional farmer.
I think we just have a really great story to tell, and we should be continually trying to improve on that story.
So I just want to point out that that information was from 2019, and 2020 data is being pulled together now, and so we'll have even more information in the next few months. I don't know if there was anything that, Keith, that you wanted to add before turning it on over to the Kerfelds and Tom.
Very quickly, yes, we're just completing the database for 2020, and we continually see that, at least in the water quality sort, they're showing strength when it comes to that median and net farm income above their peers. So we'll have that published here about April 1st.
Are there any particular questions for some of the case study farmers who went through this program?
Don't be shy.
I think it would be good if, in the meanwhile, Tom and the Kerfelds would add a little bit of why they are part of this and what interested them and what they see as the benefit beyond the video.
Yeah, I guess, for our farm here, I guess we got started with cover crops probably 5-6 years ago. It wasn't so much for the financial reasons that we started with it. We run a lot of highly erodible ground, and we wanted to try protecting the ground from washing, as soon as we take corn silage off, or as soon as a crop, try protecting that ground, hold it in place till next spring. And we have been our farm minimum till and no till. So we to be able to plant right into that without having to till the ground and loosen it back up to take the chance of losing that ground. So, and we've been trying a lot of different things. There's a lot to learn about putting cover crops in. one thing we have found out, you got to be flexible. I mean, some years you just don't get a chance to get something in. Like fall of 19, so wet. It's trying to get the crop, very, very little opportunity to get anything in the ground for cover crop after corn silage. I mean, I think you could do it maybe somewhat that year with soybeans. But it was a tough year for that. But nevertheless, what we found out with you can plant right into this stuff. There's a little learning curve to it, but and that's why we know it's working for us for as a forage. If we want to take it in the spring as a forage and planting the corn crop behind it, and also just burning it off and planting it directly into it or planting green. But coming into this program, we were kind of intrigued about going into this program to try figuring out, okay, now that we know it's good for the environment, let's prove this to ourselves that this is economically benefit to us. And if it's at least close to being equal or positive for financially, heck, why not keep doing it? So that's kind of what we run into here on our farm.
And I've been working with cover crops since probably 2011, 12 as well. And I started out just looking for another vision. You know, when you see black snow, you know you got a problem. And you see that all over when you drive, when you have a cover crop, everything stays in place. Your water stays where you want it. The ditches are clean, and we have to think about the public. The public is always driving by. They're looking to see what you're doing, and when they see that nice green cover crop growing, you get compliments about that, and that's part of the reason why I do it for that, and I do it for the feed part of it, because we're always short of feed with the amount of cattle we have, and also with this the nutrients that our farm produces, and we talked, that's showing a little bit in the film there, but it's so important that we put those nutrients in the right place and not over fertilize. And over the years with a crop consultant, I found that I was over fertilizing, I was in the wrong chemicals, and money that I saved by hiring a crop consultant is just, it's a no-brainer. It just helped me a lot. And right now the commercial fertilizer, I use hardly any. I will use on alfalfa where I can't get to, or that it can spread the nutrients out on the alfalfa. So it's giving me the same value as a commercial fertilizer, and plus I'm utilizing more of my own. That's what I have to say right now. Anybody else?
Any challenges that you experienced by being involved in either the water quality certification program or the farm business management program?
Hi, Bernie. Anyway, we were with adult farm management for quite a few years. When my son, Nick, decided he wanted to come in with us, it was easier for me to work with an outsider, and he knew our farm business management director. He knew him well from high school, and Sean went on to teaching on the college level, and so that helped me. And because sometimes the father-son thing doesn't always work perfect. And anyway, with that helped level that off, and that helped Nick understand why we do some of the things that we do. What was the other question?
On the water quality certification program.
Water quality, see, over the years, I've been working with Soil Water Service for many years, for about 10, 15 years. So I was doing this in steps. And so when it came time for us to be water quality certified, actually we just had to increase the buffer along the creek, just a small amount, about 50 feet. Otherwise, we were pretty much in compliance because we have been working with them for so many years. And the reason why we were working with them for so many years is we have a creek that runs right around our farm, and we're having problems with trains getting into the creek, and so they helped us clean all that up.
I guess for us here on the Kerfeld side, I mean, we really didn't have there was really no challenges to meet the requirements for it. All these years we were kind of leaning towards conservation and nutrient management. So it wasn't a problem getting certified or anything like that. It was fun to know that what we were doing was something that everybody expects. You kind of go through years wondering what you're doing, if it's right or not for the environment, and it was just confirming that it was good.
Thanks. Are there any other questions for Kerfelds or Mill Creek Dairy?
I'm not seeing any in the chat. You know, please feel free to unmute yourselves too and ask a question directly if you'd like to. Well, Aaron and
Yes, I have a question. If the question I had for the farmers was, I get it a lot, is how much it costs to put in the cover crops. I hear some really wild numbers sometimes as far as seeding cost, if you have an idea on a range.
I guess here ourselves, most of the time what we use is a cereal rye. It seems to be the easiest and the latest one to plant that'll make it. We've done rapeseed, we've done radishes after a third crop, after put a manure application out, and then we seed that, the rape and the radishes, and then the cereal rye into that. And that worked, but that was right after third crop. So then we were able to come back in the springtime, and we were no-tilling right into that ground, and that worked quite well. But since that, other than that, we've been using pretty much cereal rye. Cereal rye, pretty much, it costs you about $13 to $15 an acre for the seed costs. And then we have a no-till drill that we use, and we rent out to other farmers that want to do no-tilling with it, whether it be cover crops or alfalfa or something in the fall. But it costs, on that it'd be about $12 an acre for the drill itself. In that drill, you don't have to prepare any ground for it. I mean, that drill will get it in the ground and make it happen. But yeah, seed costs you 12, 13, 14 bucks an acre on the ryegrass. You go to the rape and the radishes, that'll cost you between $8 and $10 too. Unless you put a combination or a cocktail of it in, you'd probably be going to run it up in that $15, $20 an acre if you put a whole cocktail of it in, which isn't too bad at all in our eyes.
Thanks. And I recognize that we are now at 12:30. I just wanted to pull up super quickly on the screen. Just a big thank you to the different funders for this project: Compeer Financial, Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative, McKnight Foundation, Midwest Dairy, NRCS, and a few different grant programs from the Department of Agriculture. And if you are interested in finding out the Farm Business Management Program, the Water Quality Certification Program, or HASP, here are some web links and email addresses. And I'll also drop these in the chat so you can copy and paste from there.
That's great. Thank you, Erin. Make those nice and accessible, right?
All right. Okay.
Awesome. Any other last minute questions or anything
There's
else?
nothing else at this point.
I think we were saying the same thing, Erin.
Sorry, delays, lags.
Right.
Yep.
Our technology, yay.
If there aren't any other, I wanted to say a big thank you to Tim and Nicola, and to Tom Gregory, and then also thank you to Mark and Keith had to duck off. So things, if you have any particular questions when it comes to this particular project, again, any of the different programs, feel free to reach out, and thanks for listening today.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks for coming.
All right, no problem.